please talk about morality of abortion. I cannot determine if it is moral or not. Even though I am pro-choice, I still feel it's killing a human. Okay, I'm going to just let them know that when you have a fetus that's developing, it has its own DNA. It is a developmental stage of a human, just like it would be a developmental stage of a chicken if we were looking at it in a biology class, right? So I don't disagree that you are terminating a human, killing a human, however you want to label it. The question becomes, when is it justified to kill a human, right? And the other question is, when is it killing someone, when is it letting someone die? So, for example, there are times when, I'm not going to say, and another question is whether you view morality as, there's like a, So, for example, if I kill somebody in self-defense, I clearly have violated that person in response to a violation that they propagated, right? So you've got a person that immediately drops the social contract, is coming at me, is going to kill me or harm me, and I fight back and I end up killing that person. Now, it's up to individuals whether they want to label that as a justified immoral action, that I acted without regard for their humanity because I didn't care at that time about their humanity. I just cared about protecting myself. And so you could say it was immoral in the sense of how I viewed the other person at the time I did it. But you could also say it was justified to behave immorally because I was being attacked in an immoral way. And if I had behaved morally, I would just have ended up dead. And I have this, there's this idea that, we don't expect people to just go to their deaths and allow, they are allowed to fight back. And so there's that aspect of it where you could say that's an immoral action that's justified, or you could say because you can justify it, once somebody violates that moral contract, you are justified in using reasonable response, and I'm going to call that a moral response. I don't care how people label it. I think it's justified whether you label it moral or immoral. But when you're dealing with abortion, we have this issue that in every single instance where a person's bodily integrity or bodily autonomy is going to be violated, we are very, very sparing in doing that. So, for example, unless you have committed horrible crimes, we usually are not going to force you to give up blood, tissue, DNA. You need a warrant to get somebody's DNA unless they give it to you, unless they throw something in the trash can. Right, if you're going to take it from a person. And so, or if you're going to use it. And so when you look at it in the sense of, people a lot of times will say, you had sex, right? They'll go back to you had sex. And this is always kind of a weird argument to me because every biological parent has had sex. If they, now we have some, in vitro kind of, or what do you call it, fertilization type things where maybe they didn't have sex. But in general, most people that produce a baby biologically have had sex. And so the question would become, why would that end at the point the baby is birthed? If I am obligated by the fact that I had sex to give up my body parts to a child who is not capable independently sustaining itself like every other body, right? So if my child starts to have kidney failure, if the law does not compel me to donate a kidney, if that child has no right to my blood and tissue unless I consent to that, even if the child dies. So then the question becomes, if my child needs a kidney and I say I have a right to not donate my kidney, I have a right to not be an organ donor, I have a right to not be a blood donor, does that mean that I've killed my child if they die? And so then the broader question becomes, if you're not a blood and tissue donor, are you killing people?
Sure.
Right? Are you a murderer? And so for me, the idea is it is always the individual's right to own their body and to let other people use it or not use it. And it's a dangerous precedent to say that someone can use your body without your consent. I mean, to me, that's the concept behind slavery. Right, I can use your body. I can have sex with you. It's the idea behind rape, right? That I can use your body without your consent. That I can do these things. I can violate you. I can beat you up. I can do things to your body that you do not consent to. And And what we're basically saying when it comes to, and there's a difference between law and morality, I understand. But the reason that, this is a scary thing to have legal restrictions on is because it starts to cross over into, and you cannot defend yourself against this violation. You have to accept it, even though no other parent has to accept it, no other biological, contributor has to accept it. Just pregnant people have to accept this bodily violation. No one else does. And I understand also that it differs in that you have to proactively remove the person that's already been growing inside someone else. But that's an unfortunate reality of nature. And again, what is the precedent? The precedent is you're not allowed to use someone else's body without their consent. That's the precedent. So if we want to look at other situations to say, well, how do we deal with this one? We have this situation now where somebody is forming. We have a human being that is forming in another human being. What do we do with this? Well, let's look at the precedent. What do we ever do when somebody will die without using someone else's body? We don't allow it without consent. And this is why a lot of people say it should be a choice, because this is not an easy thing, and
right.
It is true in the way that just like when you kill someone in self-defense, you have absolutely violated that person you killed. The question isn't whether or not you violated them. When you murder someone, when you kill someone, when you kill them even in self-defense, you have violated somebody. Killing a human being is violating them. The question is whether you can justify that. And so with this, I think I am hesitant to say that I would call it, is it killing? Is it allowing someone to die? Is it killing if we respect everyone's right to deny their body to other people? Do we have some reason why we would draw a line at a pregnant person other than, well, it's developing?
Yeah.
But when they find out it's developing, do they have a right to react to that, to respond to that? And so it has a lot to do with how you label certain things and how you view certain things.
Yeah, I'm a little frustrated by the whole life question. Yes, it's alive. I wish there were a lot more focus on who is going to take responsibility for bringing this child up, bringing it into the world and bringing it up and turning it into a responsible adult. And that whole thing just gets completely left on the table.
Yeah.
Who cares if you're poor? Who cares if you're incapable? You damn well better have this child.
Well, that's like recently, right? They announced that when people come across the border, the southern U.S. border, they're just going to take the children away. And I was like, and do what with them? Like, what is your plan for these millions of children? Like, what are we going to do with them? And the answer was something, I think it was someone was making a quote on TV the other morning, and they said the answer was something like, well, they'll just go into foster care or something, or whatever. I think it was or whatever.
Oh, just what
and
we
it's
need,
like,
right?
oh, that's so glad you've thought this out and that we have a plan in place. That makes me feel so much better now that we'll be taking these children because we've got whatever lined up. And yeah, there's this whole thing about, you have to think about this. This is somebody that's going to exist.
Well, I think if you dislike abortion, and I think there's lots of reasons to dislike it, you should be very much for sex education. You should be very much for contraceptives.
Yeah.
You should be very much for
and they probably
inculcating
are.
responsibility
if they're
in
identifying...
adults. You should be for a social safety net. You should be for helping mothers get the proper prenatal care.
You should be for all the things that people that are anti-choice are against.
Yes. And none of this seems to be the
pro-choice. They don't believe that.
They don't believe that.
Right. They don't believe that. And all the reason that they are, the fact that they're against all these other things and that they have to come up with all these justifications for why, contraception, sex education, like all of this stuff that would help and has demonstrated to help in so many other, parts of the globe. The reason that they are against those things belies the real belief, right? Which is not about, you're killing a human being and life is so sacred. Life is not sacred to them. They don't care. They laugh at the thought of you being tortured for eternity. They want to impose and oppress you with their religion. They use it as a bludgeon. And these are not people that really care and are empathetic and loving people, right? We see that all the time. We get these demonstrations. These are some really hateful, nasty people.
Yeah.
And They are not concerned. This is not about a baby. This is about you're not living according to their God rules, and you had sex, and that's why you should be punished. That's what it boils down to every time.
Oh yeah, it's a very punitive sort of attitude, and it's really pretty sad.
You should be punished with this little blessing. Right? I mean, it's like two sides of their mouth.
Yep.
But anyway, that was my 2 cents. I don't know if it helps because we don't have feedback.
You got my half cent.